More with Jeff Carlson and Mason Marsh on their photographic adventures. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by TextExpander by Smile, the makers of world-class software. Visit textexpander.com/podcast to learn more and download your free demo. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. This is part 2 in a 2-part conversation with Jeff Carlson and Mason Marsh, the co-hosts of the Photocombobulate podcast, about a photographic journey that they recently took. In the last edition, we started up a discussion of workflows on the road. We start there again as we wrap up that part. We talk about some of the lessons they learned on their adventure and a whole lot more. So let's go back and let Jeff and Mason do the talking.
Well, so for my part, I had my laptop partially because I was running the beta versions of Lightroom that just came out this week. And so, I wanted to be able to play with that. And I think mostly because the computer is just where I do a lot of my processing. And so that's why I had my laptop with me. That's why I just imported everything into there. The problem was, the laptop battery. So I have a 2019 MacBook Pro. It's a 16-inch, and it's got a pretty decent GPU, and that's great when I'm in my office. But you fire up Lightroom, and it's using the GPU to do a lot of the rendering and the editing and the processing, and I like this machine, but it is not good in terms of battery life when you're running anything by Adobe. And so, which is one reason why I'm really looking seriously at getting one of the new, M1 Max MacBook Pros, because, it might actually last. It could be fascinating. And so that's just where I'm more comfortable doing my importing, and I can do some keywording and things like that. The problem was, this screen, again, great screen, but not as great when I'm sitting at a picnic table in Yosemite. And, I would have to either, crank the brightness way up, which then affects the battery, or wait until, the evening where I could see better. But because we'd gotten up at 5 o'clock in the morning, by 8:30, 9 o'clock, I was knackered. I was just like, I can't do anything. And I have to say, this was the first time that I was just sort of looking over enviously at Mason with his iPad, and the screen's super bright and you can see everything really nicely. I have the same model iPad. I have the 11-inch, but I hadn't set my workflow up that way. And it was a real eye-opener for me seeing how much of a difference that actually made, which is sort of funny because I'm the guy who wrote a book on using the iPad for photography at one point. I think part of it is I just chose wrong in this circumstance. I think if we were completely hotel-based, that wouldn't be an issue. But just, in terms of being in the field, and I don't have hoods or anything like that would, help with that. And I didn't want to go that route. There was one time when I was looking at pictures, or I was working on my laptop. I think this was in Yosemite, and I was sitting in a camp chair behind a tree that was giving me some shade. And I think I had a t-shirt over my head, and then, blanketed over the laptop. I was like, yes, here I am in the amazing, spectacular nature of Yosemite, and I'm huddled under a t-shirt with my computer. I just felt like I was violating every rule of being outside.
Yeah. At one point I looked over and I was like, where did Jeff go? And I saw him kind of tucked in behind this big pine tree, and he put this shirt over his head, and I was just like, the ergonomic challenges there of him curled up in this camp chair thinking, here we are in 2021, and this is what we have to do to work on our photos. And then I went back to my nap in the hammock. But
I was hoping you'd say you got a photo of this, but apparently
no. If I reached my
one.
phone, I think my phone was over on the table. But I can't wait for this new MacBook Pro with this screen, because it being the same style of screen that's on my iPad, I know I can use it anywhere. And after seeing Jeff's challenges with the brightness and the contrast of that screen on his computer, it really solidified for me that any future computer that I buy has to have at least that kind of a brightness of a screen that we'd enjoy on the iPad now. It's once you have it, you realize how good it can be, and you don't want to go back and do a normal low contrast screen.
Yeah.
Impossible. And, even in coffee shops, you can't really expect a dark place to work when you're on the road, unless you want to hole up under a shirt somewhere. So you've got to have a screen that can do that, and Apple's going to give that to us. And Jeff's going to cave in and order one of those new MacBook Pros. I can just feel it.
Maybe.
I feel like there's an opportunity here for you to develop the Photocombobulate blanket. That
oh my God!
Is
don't
just well,
don't say this, because Mason will brand anything. So yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So look, just go to wherever your favorite curtain store is. Get some blackout curtains. Go to somebody and have them embroider a Photocombobulate logo on it, and there you go. You got it.
Yep.
Actually, I would create a hat, like a wide-brimmed hat that had a roll-out curtain. That's what I'm envisioning. You'd have this roll-out hat. One nice thing about Jeff's laptop cranking up
to get some structure.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that I pictured with Jeff at one point, in the evenings it'd be quite cold, and there was one night where Jeff had to stay up late. He was working on an article under deadline, and he was, I think it was in Yosemite. He was out at the picnic table working, and one thing I had in my mind was, well, at least he has that laptop and those fans to keep him warm. That thing's cranking out all that heat. If he'd gone into his tent, it probably could have gotten it up to at least 60 degrees in there with that GPU screaming.
Okay, so here's one for you, because I hear Jeff say that he made one mistake. What did you all learn? I mean, because you are both very experienced photographers. This is certainly not your first rodeo, but I think that every time you take trips like this, you have to learn something. So what did both of you learn? And I'm talking about gear, shooting in general, packing, planning, the whole bit. What lessons came out of this?
Well, I can think of a couple things. Well, it's funny. I'm trying to think if there was like something new that I learned, other than, yes, I can spend so much time with Mason and we will never run out of things to talk about. Which, I mean, I'm forgetting the numbers already. We drove 1,600 miles, and it was like almost 60 hours in the car.
2,600 miles, 2,600 miles. Yeah.
Sorry, 2,600 miles. And so, it's good to be with a friend who you can keep talking to. But like, just a lot of things were reinforced for me. So, for example, we mentioned running into some of these photo groups. I think every single workshop that we ran into, you would have the sunrise or the sunset, and the sun would break that horizon, and they'd get some shots, and then they would leave. And again, like, I'm hoping that they were doing that because they had something grander. But I know in at least one case, we were at the Bristlecone Pines Forest, which is just this amazing spot. And we know that at night, as soon as the sun went down, they were going to all go have pizza, because they were all really excited about this pizza that they were going to have. And so, and they were a lovely group. We talked to them for quite a while we were making photos, and they were really, really gracious about being in a photo space, which I think, just to go on a little slight tangent, sometimes you run into people who, they're there to get their shot, and they have this sort of relentless pursuit of doing that. But then you have to have just like a measure of politeness and a measure of being able to get along with people. And so with this group, it was fantastic because we all just sort of ended up in this knot near some trees that was a good photo angle. And so, there was a lot of, I'm going to shoot here. Hey, when you're done, can I shoot in that spot? Yeah, absolutely. And you move around and you accommodate. So that was great. But then they went off to have pizza, partially because the sky was smoky, but the sky was smoky and the light was fading quickly. But we stuck around. I think we were there for another 2 hours, and the smoke cleared. The Milky Way came out, the stars came out. We have these like amazing night photos, these astrophotography shots that these people, I'm sure they were warmer and full of pizza, but in terms of making photos, we had just a fantastic time there. And so the lesson that was reinforced to me over and over again was, don't just look at your phone and it will tell you when sunset is, and then once it ticks over and says, okay, well now it's 11 hours until sunrise, and then you head out, because there's so much light that happens. There's so many different things photographically that can appear. So many times that's when things would get good. That's when the sky would look the best. And so being able to take our time. And this is something that we built into the schedule. We weren't just going to go and run and take a few shots and dash off to the next place. We wanted to explore. And so this was stuff that we already knew, but it was just so reinforced for me that this is the way to do it. And if you're there to make good pictures, because that's really why you're there, putting in that time and being patient can really pay off.
Well, there's so much wisdom there, because that doesn't just apply to, well, I know, I'm serious. I don't think that just applies to what you're talking about, Jeff, that photo taking, but we're all constantly distracted by so many things. There's something to be said about being in the moment or being focused on what you're there to do, and not being distracted by great pizza. The great pizza will probably be there tomorrow, but for right now, let's do what we're here to do.
Right. So. Well, and one of the things that we talked about on our podcast that was really hit home here was, yes, we're there to make photos, and we're thinking about composition and light and all of that, but we were also on the valley floor in Yosemite. We were in these amazing locations in California. And so, you have that big chunk of also appreciating where you are. And there were a few places. We were in I'm going to say it wrong again, Tuolumne Meadows. Did I say it right?
Tuolumne.
Oh, man. Okay. The Tuolumne
You'll get it
Meadows.
eventually.
Eventually, I'll get it right. And so this was on our way out of Yosemite, and we go to these meadows, and we pulled off the road and just sort of went exploring. I went exploring for quite a ways, and when I look back, the photos that I got from that part of the day, they're fine. There are a few that I really like, but I can't really say it was like a big bounty photo portion of the trip. But I had the best time. I mean, I was just out next to a little stream. It was kind of cool. The weather was crisp, and it just gave me a chance to pause and reflect and breathe deeply, even with the smoke. The smoke wasn't too bad right there, and just appreciate the fact that I was out doing this. And I mean, it sounds almost, I don't know, I sound like a motivational speaker or something, but, you know, a big part of landscape photography and doing this is getting out there and seeing new things and enjoying the experience. And so, yeah, my photos from that day are fine. But my memory of that day is a lot stronger, and that's okay.
This edition of MacVoices is supported by Smile, the makers of Text Expander, my most used productivity utility. Text Expander gives you the power of text expansion. That means that you type just a few letters or numbers, called a snippet, and have it expand to a word, a sentence, a paragraph, or a page of information, or a block of code. Pretty much anything that can be expressed as text can be handled by Text Expander. Have something you type incorrectly every time? Text Expander can correct it automatically every time. And it can do it in English, French, or German. Have a favorite snippet that you want to share? You can do that with just an email invitation, and you can set permissions on that shared snippet. You can insert the contents of the clipboard into a snippet. You can organize your snippets into groups. You can search snippets via keyboard shortcut. The list goes on and on and on. How could you not want to tap into all this power that is so easy to learn, set up, and use? Right now, I want you to visit textexpander.com/podcast and sign up for a free trial. You will have your first snippet up and running in minutes, and once you do, you won't go back. Text Expander from Smile, the makers of world-class software. Thanks to Smile for their support of MacVoices. Mason, how about you? Lessons learned?
Probably the biggest lesson I learned, listening to Jeff talk, I kind of running through my head, there's 1,000 lessons that I learned. But one that's going to stick with me the longest is this one. Life for me, I'm 52 years old. I've had tons of great friends in my life. Very, very fortunate. I have a wonderful family. I have a lot of social interactions, very fulfilling for me and very satisfying. But to spend, 10 days with someone like Jeff, who we share a lot of common things. We went to college together. We've known each other for over 30 years now. But we hadn't sat down and spent time, just the two of us. I don't think ever, for any length of time.
No, not like this.
And just the two of us sitting in the car telling stories and telling jokes and just being goofy. We picked up, a while there. I think there's 2 or 3 days where all we did every time we saw something cool is we do an Owen Wilson. Oh, wow. We just did this over and over. We're two grown guys just having fun on the road. Of all the photos I made on this trip, and there's several that I'm really, really proud of, the thing that I'm going to carry the longest from this trip was that I got to spend 10 days with Jeff. And that has a lot of meaning for me because I've been cooped up in the house for 18 months or more now with people that I love, but it's so nice to get out with somebody different and just have some time where you could be yourself and relax and be in beautiful places with this person and share this experience. And so I think a lot of us spend so much time socially engaged in various ways with technology. But to simplify that and just have two people together talking is something that doesn't happen enough. And so for me, that's what I learned was I need to do that more. And so I'm already thinking of where Jeff and I can go next year because I've got more stories. I didn't get through.
Yes,
I didn't get through all my stories yet. I didn't.
Believe me, there's an endless supply of fascinating stories.
Okay, so at the end of the day, you two took a lot of photos. You traveled to a lot of places. What are you doing with the photos? Where can we see them? Or are they just for personal satisfaction? Or are these going to be leveraged into other projects? Or all of the above?
Yeah, every single one of my images is going to be sold as an NFT. So you'll be able to buy them. No.
Okay.
No. I don't even understand that stuff. If you go to photocombobulate.com and go to the episodes link, you'll find the page for this last episode about our trip. And there's a large gallery on there. So if you want one place where you can see a lot of photos from this trip, that they're collected in that gallery. Otherwise, I plan on kind of trickling mine out as I get them done on social media. There are several of my photos, I'll be honest, Chuck, several of my big panoramas that are so big my old iMac can't take them anymore. I'm waiting for that new M1 Max laptop to fully finish processing those images. And so I'll be sharing those and using those for various work things for years, I'm sure. But I do have a couple. There's a couple, especially one from the bristlecone pines. That was a really special spot for me, shooting the stars in those 4,000-year-old trees. Just stunning. There's one in particular that I think is going to have to become a big print somewhere in my house. So I need to figure that out and get that ordered here pretty soon, because I'm itching to see that on something tangible.
Yeah. Same, I think, for a lot of my stuff. What's funny is, and what was sort of problematic during 2020, we were going to go to Italy on a workshop, and of course, COVID shut that down. And for the last several years, I've really enjoyed being able to do a workshop, get a whole bunch of images, and then use that for the various projects that I have. And so, even though I've got 100,000 photos in my library, probably more, I sort of feel like I'm scraping the barrel lately because there's a lot of stuff in there, and I'm having to dig deeper to find things to use for articles and books. And so being able to go out and get I shot somewhere around 2,600 photos on this trip. Wow, one for every mile. That's not how it worked, but
yeah.
and to have that. So, the books that I'm working on right now, you'll definitely be able to pick up a book and be like, oh yeah. This is all when Jeff did this trip down in California. But then also, our Instagram accounts. I mean, some of it is just, it's been nice to not try to process everything all at once. It's been nice to, maybe do a few every night and post. And so that, believe me, you're going to see a lot of autumn photos, autumn leaves in my feed for a while. But yeah, it's going to be just that and for projects and things like that. I should clarify, when you go to the Photocombobulate site, it is episode 6 that you want to look for that has all these photos. And I'm sure we'll figure out other things, because I now feel like I have this wealth of good imagery to work on, and occasional bad imagery that I can use as examples for how to fix things, which is also helpful for the types of things that I do. So,
hey, absolutely. In fact, that would be, I think, almost as interesting as the shots themselves. Is okay. This is what I start with. Here's what I end with. Here's how I got there. So.
Yeah. It's. I find that when I go on a trip like this, it's a weird mindset, because obviously I'm looking for good photos and good compositions, but every once in a while, I'm also looking for, okay, here's an example of really bad exposure, or here's an opportunity where I can turn the ISO up really high and get a noisy picture, and see how I can fix that later. So it's sort of goes back to that question earlier about, what are you thinking about? And is this vacation? And I find myself, looking ahead like, oh, I think Luminar might be able to fix this really well. I should take this shot in a really poor way and then do another one that's in a better way. And, it's all swirls around.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the reasons that I was so anxious to talk to you both about this, I listened to the episode, and this is something I will never do. And because I know I'm just never going to take 2 weeks to just go and shoot photos. And I'm certainly not the photographers that you two are. But at the same time, that's just not something I will ever do. So the idea that, because I would have to find some way to justify it, and there would be no way. Mm-hmm. You two obviously can use those things, and for different projects and different purposes. But just the idea that, okay, I'm going to go take 2 weeks and travel to all these really beautiful places and try to capture this stuff. I applaud you for it, for taking the time to do it. I wish I could, and I wish more people could. So I think it'd be the world would be a better place, but that's a whole other discussion. So,
yeah. Well, I know. I mean, you could take a long weekend.
Yeah. Might be able to squeeze that in.
Yeah. I know we're incredibly fortunate to be able to do that and call it work. No, there wasn't a day on that trip where I wasn't like, wow, this is so nice that we're able to do this. That our families were gracious enough to say, yeah, go ahead, get out of here.
Totally.
It's definitely not something I will ever take for granted. One thing I would say, to echo what you just said, Chuck, is getting to these places in California, especially, I felt this profoundly when we were in Yosemite. I was in Yosemite Valley about 20 years ago, and when we went back this year, it felt a lot different. It was, the drought, the fires, the impact of the amount of people that come to these places. Yosemite really felt beat up to me. And I stepped back and I said, I'm really glad we're here and that we're going to photograph this, because it's possible that if I came back in 10 or 15 years, that it's going to look different. And, especially if a fire comes through there, especially if the drought persists and these trees die and things like that. And so I think that as we drove through areas where fires had burnt through, and we went through areas where we even saw ruins of houses and things that had been hit by wildfires, it really pressed onto me the importance of going and seeing this stuff while it's still there. And getting out and not relying on other people to come and document it, but come and see it with your own eyes and take your own photos. It's really important.
Well, I did hear from both your families, and they said, "Thank God these two went away. We got 2 weeks of relaxation." They just like, let's send them away for another 2 weeks.
They're already blocking it out on the calendar for next year.
Yeah. They're planning what they're going to do while you two are away.
Yeah, it was great. My family, they took a weekend and just went to a hotel somewhere, and it was like, oh, good, we don't have to deal with dishes or anything like that. So you're out hanging out, freezing your backside off in a sleeping bag, and they're going to a hotel. Yeah.
Who's the smarter of this group?
Well, I will always say that my wife is the smarter of the group. So that's just like the baseline. So yeah.
I can confirm that.
Yeah.
Good. Nice, Mason. Nice. Well, I will have links in the show notes to get to episode 6 of Photocombobulate, and any equipment or gear these gentlemen send me links to, I'll have there as well. And anything else that during the conversation seems to scream out for a link, I'll make sure that is there, so you can enjoy this, because obviously they did go through some hardship, but it sounds like they had a lot of fun doing it to get this stuff. Thank you guys for sharing this, both on the episode and here, because like I say, when I was listening to it, it's like, I'd really like to look behind the scenes at some of this and find out, how things went. So good stuff.
Well, thank you. Thanks for listening to the whole episode. It's a long one.
Well, it is, but like I say, it's really intriguing. So I will let you promote, Photocombobulate, because folks are going to say, "What's that?" They may have missed your first appearance here on MacVoices. So what is Photocombobulate?
Okay, I'll take this one.
They don't know. Folks. They don't.
Almost to oversimplify it, Photocombobulate is like sitting in a car with Jeff and I for a couple hours. It's us having a conversation about something we care about, and in this particular case, it's photography. And we both find, as Jeff's an author, I'm a photography educator, we both have spent years now trying to help make photography accessible to people who weren't born with a camera in their hands. And this particular style that we have is very conversational and fun. And so Photocombobulate is a chance for us to hang out some more and talk about photography and help people understand it a little bit better and take better photos.
Yeah. The whole idea came about because, like photography is complicated. There's so many different parts to it. I mean, just here today, we've talked about not just cameras and lenses a little bit, but, gears and laptops and iPads and, the clothing that you're going to wear and the sleeping bags and tents. There's so much around it. And so we wanted to have something where we can take these things apart, make sense of them, and put them back together, so that you're not discombobulated. You're thinking purposefully and making. I know you thought I was gonna use the term. You're not discombobulated. You're photocombobulated, but you're putting things together because, as we found on this trip, even though we are sort of the quote unquote expert sometimes, there are times when you can be in the most beautiful location, and if you're scattered, if you don't know where your gear is, if you're fumbling to try to find the lens or the new memory card that you need to put in, that's all distracting you from the reason you're there. Take good images, enjoy the experience. And so the podcast is really a way to figure out how do we put those things together so that they're not a distraction. So you have a much better time doing it, which will result in better photos and more satisfaction, etc.
I listen to several photography-oriented podcasts, and it's easy to try to say this while you two are here, but I really do mean it. Photocombobulate is different. It's not necessarily focused just on gear or just on technique or just on the geekery of photography, but it kind of covers all those and a lot more. So you two have created something unique in that space. At least I haven't stumbled across anything like it, and I would encourage everyone to go and check it out if you're even moderately interested in photography. And dip in and dip out if it doesn't work. That's kind of what podcasting is all about. So
yeah, thank you. That means a lot. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you, because obviously it's a labor of love, and those of us that are listening really appreciate it. And they don't know it yet, but they have given me a reason to bring them both back, because they made reference to something that I would like to explore deeper, but we won't do it now. We will do it a little bit later. So expect to see them later on MacVoices.
Excellent.
What could it be? I actually have no idea.
Neither one of you do. I can tell, yeah. So, Jeff Mason,
coffee,
thank you. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us on.
Yep, we'll do it again. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Go listen to this episode of Photocombobulate. I think you'll find it very interesting, especially if you enjoyed this conversation. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.